I'm George Geekus. Welcome to the Roots of the LMHE podcast. The mission of the podcast is to amplify the voices of Louisiana's music community and cultural leaders while exploring how heritage, creativity, and economic equity intersect. We are joined today by one of our community and music leaders, Jan Ramsey.
Hi there.
How are you today?
I'm very well. Very well, thank you.
I want to start asking first, how did you become involved in the New Orleans music and culture scene and the community?
Wow. I was one of those kids that grew up loving music. I think Quint Davis tells the same story, that he used to listen to the AM radio stations because they didn't have FM back then, and on a transistor radio. And that's what I did too. Every night I would listen to the radio on my little transistor radio that had an alligator clip that you put on a piece of metal, that went into my radio. And I'd go to bed with it, listening to the radio when I was, 10, 11 or something like that. But I've always loved music, always. I think that's because my grandfather built a hi-fi system, and they used to play music all the time, different kinds of music. But I used to listen to the stuff on the radio like Irma Thomas and Ernie and all those people, Art Neville. And I just always loved it. And my parents bought me a record player, and my dad would occasionally bring home albums and 45s and stuff like that. And then when I was probably 13 or 14, I decided that I wanted to learn how to play the guitar. And so I did. I had a teacher who was actually, I learned later on, was a guy who played on Bourbon Street, guitarist on Bourbon Street. And I was really interested in classical guitar, and I was going to go to Loyola and major in classical.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I love music. I was a band nerd, and played trombone of all things. And I was always into music. So music has always been a big part of my life. All different kinds of music. And going on for decades after that, I was a consultant for a market research firm.
Okay.
And we did a lot of we did feasibility studies and marketing studies and stuff like that. So I'd travel a lot to different cities, and, the person with the briefcase that would tell other people what to do with their money. And at the same time, I was still very interested in music. And I used to go out all the time, go out to listen to music. And I got involved in the Chamber of Commerce, of all things, and in economic development, and we were looking for a project. And right about that same time, I became acquainted with a guy who was an attorney. His name was Alice Paylett. At the time, he was kind of really the only entertainment attorney in town that people kind of knew. And we went to dinner one night, and he was telling me about music and why he was interested. Well, obviously it was his business, I mean, I wasn't involved in the music industry at all. And something clicked in my brain. And I thought, this is something that I could really get interested in. Because at the same time, I was developing a feeling that I was an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what I wanted to do,
Of course.
And that is kind of what I got hooked up in music. So I got to know a lot of the music people in town, some of the bands and some of the other people who were involved in it, and thought, we have so much talent here. We have so much richness of talent and authenticity and just fantastic music. And not only currently, but we have a history of music, that why don't people in this city really recognize the importance of music to the culture, the lifestyle, and the business and the economy of the city? So that became my goal. So I got involved in this. I was in this Chamber of Commerce subcommittee, economic development, and I proposed this idea that this committee become involved with developing the music industry and looking into it. So that's kind of where it started.
Shit started.
That's where it started. At the same time, I'm working for this company, going out of town a lot, traveling, doing these studies and stuff, writing reports for a living. So while I was in this committee, we decided to spin off a nonprofit that we call the New Orleans Music and Entertainment Association. The acronym was GNOME,
Okay.
which I think is interesting because now they're using it again. GNO has this thing called GNOME. But anyway, that started, and then the whole idea was to keep it going. It was to try to find ways to develop the music industry. Now, you're talking about somebody like me who had no clue. I knew nothing.
You were just a fan at that point.
I was just a fan and a lover and an
Yeah.
appreciator, but somebody who saw potential.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So I was the first president, and we had a really good following. And one of the things that I did is I was good, apparently, at getting publicity. And I don't remember what year it was, in the mid 80s, sometime probably after the World's Fair, 1985 or so. I met this woman who wrote for the Wall Street Journal, and she did a big article on New Orleans music in the Wall Street Journal, and I was featured in it, which surprised the hell out of me because
It's a big publication.
Well, yeah, I know, but I never thought of any. I don't think that way. I just
Uh-huh.
think, let's get the job done. Let's get the job done. And but it got attention, and it particularly got attention from the business community, which is kind of what I was targeting, because I found that the city administration and the business people had absolutely no idea what the music industry was about. Nothing. They didn't. They just think it's background noise, or we hear it, at Mardi Gras time or something.
The arts. It's not business. It's not
Exactly.
an economic driver.
And not an economic driver. Totally true. So that was my goal. So I, to get some attention for it, other than the Wall Street Journal article, which I think probably mentioned the fact that I was dying for a museum, because at that time, when I was still working at a job, I saw a tiny little filler in the States Item, I think it was States Item or Times-Picayune, about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, that they were looking for a site.
Okay.
And I thought, why isn't our city going after this?
Of course.
Probably because they had no idea.
It's quite an undertaking for sure.
They didn't understand, and nobody had pitched it. Nobody was, the timing was wrong. If it'd come 5 years later, that might have been a different story.
And what year was this, Jan?
I'd say probably 1985.
85, okay.
85, 86. And then in 1987, I tapped into the mayor's office. Sidney Bartholomew was the mayor at the time. And I got to be friendly with him. I actually went to Europe with him on one of the mayor's office junkets or something, and met a lot of people in Paris, and brought some CDs over or maybe it was albums, I don't even remember back then, to try to promote in Europe. Okay. So, I was getting my feet wet, and I tapped into the mayor's office to do a conference on music and economic development in 1987. And that was the first time anybody had ever done that. I think that the governor had a conference on music, of which Ellis Paylett was involved. And I actually went to one or two of those. And that was right at the time that South by Southwest was beginning.
Okay.
And two of the guys from South by Southwest were actually at this meeting that I went to, this governor's conference, which had maybe 10 people there. And I thought, why aren't we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we doing this? We should be doing this. Not knowing anything about anything, just, in my brain, it's a vision, we should be doing this. So I learned about the museum, and I thought this would be the ultimate thing that could ever be accomplished in New Orleans, because we already have a track record of being a great place for people to visit. And what I also found is that people that come here to visit were looking for music, and they didn't know where to find it.
Mm-hmm.
See? So I thought, well, gee, we're missing something there. And after the conference, I had the conference, which went very well. We had a lot of people show up, which was amazing back then. I was looking for something to really um, be a capstone, or not a capstone, but a linchpin for people who were involved in looking for music and also for the musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the best way to do that would be through the media.
Okay.
At the time, there was another magazine called Wavelength.
Okay.
You may not know that. You're probably too young.
Before my time.
Yeah, before your time. And I thought Wavelength was not doing well financially. And I thought if I bought it, I could transform it and make it available to people in hotels and stuff, because I knew that they were really looking for it. So at the time, a friend of mine was the president or the executive director, I don't know what it was, of the New Orleans Chamber of Commerce. And I knew him well, he was a good friend. And he said, well, if you can come up with something that we could distribute during the Republican National Convention, which was going to be in New Orleans that particular year, 1988 it was, we can get it distributed. And that's where OffBeat was born.
Wonderful.
Because the other magazine, Wavelength, was not capable of doing it. Okay. And I decided I couldn't buy it because it had too many financial problems.
From the launch point of OffBeat, that was the basis of the community and kind of the only outlet we had on a level for the entire world to see what was happening. Yeah. Culmination through the famous Jazz Fest issue. And
well, that was before. I didn't really start doing the Jazz Fest Bible or even doing a Jazz Fest issue until maybe 2 or 3 years after the magazine hit. I started the magazine. And eventually, and I used to go to the Jazz Fest, but I did not realize that at the time that I started it, how important the Jazz Fest was.
So, Jan, what is your involvement with the LMHE exactly?
Well, I got to know Chris. I met him, and I should have met him a lot earlier, but for some reason, he didn't know about me, and I didn't know about him. And we met and had lunch one day at a place near my office, and he was telling me about the museum, and I just kind of flipped out because the museum, to me, a museum would be a place for not only local people to learn about the history and the culture of the city outside of what they just, hear in the background, but it would also be a place where a visitor could go to learn about the musical culture and history of New Orleans music. Anywhere from Buddy Bolden and Louis Armstrong, doesn't go by Louis Armstrong, all the way up to whatever, current Big Frida. It's the same thing. Of course. So, people need a place to go. There is no place to go in the city where people can learn and be exposed to music. There are a little few things here and there, but it's not what needs to be. And so over the years, I did things like I went before the Country Music Hall of Fame was built. My brother lived in Nashville for quite a long time, and I'd go visit him, and I went to the Country Music Association. It was a radio station, and they had all these archives of, recorded stuff, but it was in a little building, but I did visit, and that reinforced my ideas that, we need to be doing this. Who is doing this? Nobody was doing it. And it kind of freaked me out. And I thought, somebody has to do this. So I started talking about it, but I thought, I'm not the person to do this. I can advocate for it because by that time I was very involved with OffBeat in media and using that media to try to reach outside, not only this area in Louisiana, but around the world. And we did. We had subscribers. We still do have subscribers all around the world. And my trip to Europe said the same thing. I have relatives in Europe now, and they, everybody is the same. So I've seen it time and time again, but there is no place for people to go, not like a home base. It needs to be a home base. You go here, you find out about it, and then they let you loose to all the other places where you could possibly go to learn about the local music and culture. The Backstreet Museum, which didn't exist then. There was a House of Dance and Feathers that used to exist. There was not a jazz museum then. There were very few places you could learn anything about the city unless you happen to be there at a specific time.
When it's happening.
When it's happening, a second line parade, or maybe Mardi Gras Indians, or the Black Masking Indians. They don't go by Mardi Gras Indians anymore. So, that to me, it would be so important to the city in terms of an economy and a driver. I mean, obviously it's a tourist thing. At the same time, I got involved in music industry development because that's kind of where I started. I really wanted the business community and the city to understand that we have potential here for money coming out of the music industry.
Exactly. I want to harp on that for a second. You said, speaking of business, what do you think that people outside of Louisiana misunderstand or don't appreciate about our culture, and reasons why they might not be as excited about it or eager to have things like the LMHE grow and become
outside of New Orleans,
or just outside of anybody? Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, I mean, and I've been dealing with a lot of people for years, obviously over 40 years. I think that there's been a history in New Orleans of the musicians getting ripped off.
Of course.
For a very, very long time. And that still exists, unfortunately. It will probably always exist unless musicians are educated in not only learning their art and practicing their art, they also have to learn how to take care of themselves from a business standpoint. And what I've noticed over the years is that a lot of musicians, they're artists. I mean, you're a musician yourself. You're an artist, and it almost is like a different part of your brain.
It's 100% a different part of your brain.
It's a different part of your brain. And a lot of them just don't want to deal with it because it just turns them off, or they don't understand it.
They don't understand, or it feels like they're less of an artist.
Less of an artist and more of a business
and not having
person.
The creative muse just be the thing they're worried about all the time.
Exactly right. And I understand that. And I can remember there's something that happened to me. I was talking to John Cleary one day, who I've known since he basically got off the boat. And I called him one day, and we were talking about something to do with music or recording or something like that, and from a business standpoint. And I called him and I said, I want to, can we talk about blah, blah, blah. And he said to me, Jan, I'm right in the middle of doing this recording and putting this together, and I can't process it right now, and that went, it like hit me. And of course, it's like a different brain. It's like it's a totally different thing. So that was a challenge, and it is a challenge. And I tried to address that with doing, I advocated for musicians learning how to take care of themselves business-wise.
Okay.
And we used to do a series of educational events at a place over on Toledano, which was at that time a friend of mine owned, who helped me distribute the magazine. And we did it there a few times. And then I thought, well, let's do it for a month, a whole month. And by this time, the city had established a music commission. Okay. And the guy who ran the music commission, I asked him if he wanted to get involved. And he said, yeah, sure. And I said, well, it really should be institutionalized. Okay. Because if it's institutionalized, then you have the ability to make it a regular process. You may be able to get some sponsors or funding or whatever.
You can pay the musicians.
To keep it going.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we did it for a month, and then after that it fell apart because I didn't control it. He ended up controlling it, the guy at the music commission. And then it became the Music Business Institute. That's actually what we called it to begin with. Okay. The month-long thing, Music Business Institute.
And that was the first of its kind.
First of its kind, first one. And then what ended up happening is the guy took it over, and that was Eric Cager. I don't know if you know him. He does the Cutting Edge.
Okay.
Okay.
Of course.
And the Cutting Edge, that's where it came from the Music Business Institute. But he broke away from the city and did it on his own. Okay.
Outside of these organizations that are now defunct or, in the process of becoming organizations, how do you think that the Louisiana Music and Heritage Experience could help value artists better and compensate them given the current climate for artists, whether it's for their long-term stability or fair pay and just being able to live being a musician outside of worrying about the creative is actually earning a living doing it?
Well, it could obviously be a hub.
Okay.
I mean, that's what I think. It could be a hub. You could be a hub for everything. And this was also cemented in my brain on a trip that I made to Amsterdam.
Lovely city.
Lovely city. And they have a building, a whole process that is, I guess, subsidized by the
government,
Netherlands government.
Dutch government, yeah.
Right. It's a musician's center. And they had rehearsal space, they had studio space, they had performance space. It wasn't a museum per se, or an experience. Like, say, for example, at the EMP, the Experience Music Project, which I don't think exists anymore. I think it's maybe there, but they changed the name of it. Paul Allen started that in Seattle. And so I visited there. I went to the Country Music Hall of Fame after it was built, the real building, which I thought was fantastic and astounding. I've been to the Rock Hall. I've been to several music museums in Mississippi. I think I've been to one in Austin.
But nothing like the one in Amsterdam. Sounds
no,
like it was
not
a
the Amsterdam,
community epicenter, more so
exactly.
than just an educational place.
Right, it was. And what I thought was great is that the government helped to subsidize it, which you don't find in the U.S. It's sad.
Not what we do, yeah.
It's sad but true, So all this stuff is going around in my brain. So when Chris told me that he had this idea in his brain, and apparently he'd been working on it for a while, unbeknownst to me, I was thrilled. I thought, oh, this is the greatest. This is the best thing that could happen, because there's also no place, in my opinion, for people to really get, not just in, the musicians being educated and a place for the music businesses to coalesce or whatever. There's no place for people to actually learn about who made the music, how the music was made, how it changed.
All the minutia of everything.
Well, not just the minutia. It's like the progress and the growth and the persistence of music over time. No place. There was no place to go. So it really could serve two purposes or three or four purposes because there's no music center. There's no place for it to go. And LMHE could be that center. It really could.
How do you think it could change the economic future of the city? The LMHE?
Well, for one thing, I think it would be, and this is probably the thing that would generate revenue, is obviously it would be a place where visitors could come in, pay a fee, and enjoy what's there. It would also expose them to music, and when people see music, let's say they live in Indianapolis or something. If they see a New Orleans musician playing, they all go. I mean, everybody loves New Orleans music. But when you're exposed to it in New Orleans, let's say, if you're visiting New Orleans and you go home, you think, oh, we could even bring more people to our city. That's an outreach thing. That's another key component. And there needs to be an outreach for music. And the best version of that right now is the Jazz Fest.
Of course.
Because people go to the Jazz Fest and they take it home with them. And they're in love all year long. And they keep coming back. And they tell people about it. So there are so many components that LMHE could provide, and market niches that could be filled. I'm talking like a business person now.
Of course, no, because if you think about it, this is a permanent cultural structure that's going to be implemented. Where Jazz Fest, it's just a couple weekends out of the year.
Right.
And you have to be on Jazz Fest time to go.
Well,
where
you do.
Can come at any time to see the LMHE if you want to.
Exactly right. Anytime. You can go see it anytime. One thing I can say about the Jazz Fest and the foundation is that over the years, the foundation has really stepped up to do a lot of things for the community. Personally, I don't think that enough people understand the impact of the foundation and what the work that they do with their, the George Wein Center and the festival, the free festivals that they do, and their, they give educational grants and whatever. Okay. So, I mean, there are a lot of things they do.
You think the LMHE could also do the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of like local impact, not just by the musicians itself, kind of an outward impact that you've seen happen already through the Jazz Fest Foundation.
Yeah, exactly right. And the Jazz Fest Foundation could be part of it because they don't, at this point in time, they don't really have a showcase outside of the Jazz Fest. Okay.
That's an endeavor in itself, yeah.
Although they have bought a building on North Rampart Street, that they're going to turn into a home for their archives.
That sounds lovely.
Yeah, it does.
It needs to happen. Yeah.
Well, it does because the archives are real important, and there's no place for people to view them or look at them except at Jazz Fest. That's it. So if they have a community place, and it's a small building, it's like 6,000 square feet, but they're going to house their archives and probably do oral histories and maybe showcase some of their archival. It just keeps it in front of people's faces all the time, which is really what you need to do. It needs to be there all the time, not just once a year.
Exactly. It's almost like an exhibit at this point that comes through and
an exhibit. And it's, I have one foot in helping the musicians and promoting the musicians and loving the music, and the other foot in the fact that we need to develop the music industry,
of course,
and make it something that people, like Gino Inc. or the mayor's office or whatever, think about as part of their economic strategy, which, in my opinion, they still don't.
Because the economic strategy and the cultural strategy are both so important. What kind of cultural future do you see that the LMHE can provide? Because when that's seen from a business standpoint, you could see that there's so much steam and there's so many things being involved that it's undeniable that you have something important here. The business people tend to say, take a note and see a way to thrive off of it potentially.
Well, I think you have to prove it to them, you know. And in my past, when I was doing all this music industry development stuff, what I proposed is to bring in people from other cities, specifically Nashville.
Of course.
Who are involved in the business side of it. And, Nashville is a
they know what they're
town.
doing.
And it's a music town. I mean, they live off of music. And I just thought it was a great idea to have bankers from Nashville. Because at the time, New Orleans at the time when I started OffBeat was really more oil oriented. That was right about the time, right before all the oil companies left and went to Houston. Okay, because the city was very involved in the oil industry and the port. Okay,
of course.
So I thought if you introduce this other thing in a credible way and get people interested in it, thinking, well, there's some financial potential in this from, I guess, different aspects, tourism, licensing, whatever. Nobody knew what licensing. They still don't know. They still don't know. Ask a guy at, in this Chamber of Commerce, do you know what music licensing is? No,
he doesn't know what a PRO is.
No, they don't know what a PRO is. Exactly.
Well, then how would you explain to someone the importance of a project like this if they were considered donating or investing their time or wanted to be involved on a business level?
How would you persuade them to invest money in it or invest?
or become involved in any capacity?
Well, I'll tell you one thing, and this is an obvious thing, But the music industry and music per se has a glamour kind of thing attached to
It's
it.
a sexy industry.
It's a sexy industry, which is a good thing and a bad thing.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
As you know. But that is how you suck them in. You suck them in. That's not a good word.
It's okay.
That's how you get them involved.
There you go.
Yeah. That's how you get them involved. But then you have to demonstrate to them that there's money to be made and how it's made and how an investment in music and the industry will have a positive impact on the city. So that's why we brought the bankers in. Mm-hmm. And I, again, will never forget it. We got local bankers and we got national bankers. And we took them to lunch and dinner and stuff and had them talk. They had no idea there's such a thing as, royalty. They don't. It didn't.
No, that's you guys just play music. That's
yeah,
it.
You play music. They don't understand. Well, royalties are different now, obviously.
Yeah, the national bankers definitely know that now.
Well, oh no, the national bankers have known it for a long time. And a good example is, like one of the guys from Nashville was saying, we realize how and the royalty thing works. You get it on a quarterly basis. You don't get it every month. You get it on a quarterly basis. So therefore, we may know to make loans based on potential royalties that this particular artist is going to get. Mm-hmm. They will make a loan based on that. People in New Orleans, bankers,
none of our concern.
They just done
live music.
Yeah, live music
has been for a long time.
Right. And that's still important. That's the basis of it. That's kind of the basis of the music scene here is live music, obviously.
Why do you think it's important and it's right now is the time to have a world-class museum experience here?
Well, I've been thinking this for 40 years.
There you go.
But it's probably better now because, and I think that LMHE has done a really good job in showing or demonstrating to the business community by getting coverage in the city papers mm-hmm. and, the business section of the newspaper. Mm-hmm. I just think that's a very good idea. I mean, that's what I did mm-hmm. at first, when I got involved in all this stuff. That's a really great idea because you have to put it in front of their faces all the time. It would be a good idea to say, for example, get somebody from the Country Music Hall of Fame or EMP or Rock Hall or whatever, and you have somebody from Rock Hall.
People that have already done it before.
Before and say, this is why it's important, but not in a newspaper. It should go out in a steady stream.
It's organically.
Steady stream, put it out there. I mean, that's why, for example, OffBeat is not in print anymore. I'm looking for somebody to take it over, but so far, no deal. But we also started doing 20 years ago a weekly newsletter mm-hmm. because people get it every week. Every week.
Yep.
They get it every week, and it's always coming at them. And that's what keeps it puts it in the front of mind of people who ordinarily would just forget about it.
Of course.
You just keep it going out there. So I also did a newsletter called The Grapevine in the early 90s. And it was different from OffBeat. OffBeat was more a consumer-based mm-hmm. publication and distributed like a consumer-based publication. But I was still trying to get the music industry coalesced, mm-hmm. okay, if nothing else. And so we did a music directory. You probably don't remember that either. I did a music directory for 15 years. That was a book. It was like a phone book for everybody in the music industry in the state.
Yeah, back when phone books were still a thing.
Back when we still had phone books. Back before digital. Mm-hmm. And it listed all the musicians in the state and all the music businesses in the state and places like PROs and stuff like mm-hmm. that radio stations. It would list everything. And that needs to exist again. Nobody has been doing it really, because what it does is it establishes a mindset in the people who are involved in the business that we are all in this together. And if they don't coalesce, if they don't come together to create a way for people to contact each other or realize that they're part of a bigger political economic force, then it's not going to happen. And that's a difficult thing to achieve because just because of the way music is, especially in this city, people tend to fight each other.
Of course, yeah.
They fight each other. Oh, this is my turf and you're stepping on my turf. And, you know, it's not, nobody's working together
to make part of the same team, yeah.
To make the whole thing. Tide
rises all ships.
Right, yes. Right. When everybody works together, everybody rises. Yes. But in the mindset of New Orleans, it's like, well, if I don't take this gig, if you pay me $50 for this gig and I refuse to take it because it's not enough money, which it isn't.
Yes.
Then some kid down the street
is going to take it, or I'll take it for 35.
They will, right? But you know what could correct that? There could be something done on a city level, not union, doesn't have anything to do with the union, on the city level that says, musicians have to be compensated for fairly. What they do. And what you do is if you take the venues, for example, and I'm going to go to Frenchmen Street since I'm really familiar with it. You go to the guys on Frenchmen Street who adhere to this and, who would say, okay, I'm in, I'm going to be involved in this. Well, then you have to give them a carrot in order to do that because a lot of them don't care about the musicians. They couldn't care less. They just want to sell alcohol.
Understood.
And the musicians are a way to do that. But if you give them a carrot, let's say you give them a tax break or you give them a marketing package that the city is that's going to go through.
Some kind of incentive for joining this coalition, if you will.
Exactly. An incentive. You have to give them an incentive because people don't do stuff for nothing. They just don't, So you get them and then they, in turn, would pay the musicians more. Their venue or bar or whatever would have a big sign on it that says, we are a member of blah, blah, blah. We support musicians having a living wage. There are all kinds of ways you can do it. On Frenchmen Street, the way you do it is shut everybody's doors because it never used to be that way. When Frenchmen Street first started, everybody had to keep their doors shut. And that changed, and the city never enforced the zoning law.
Of course.
But that's a whole other issue. Okay. Oh, well, university-wise, back in the day, and I'd say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, almost a generation ago, all the universities would have classes on and encourage the kids to learn about the local culture, the local history, go out and listen to music. And that's when college kids went out to listen to music a lot. And they don't anymore, which I've discovered over the years. I had a young man who was out of the music business at Loyola who worked for us for a while. And I was talking to him, he's 21 or something, senior level. And I said, when you want to go out and listen to me, where do you go with your girlfriend? You go out and listen to music?
Yeah, where do you go? Where are your spots?
Where do you go? They go listen to DJs and drink. And back when I was younger,
that was not the thing.
No, I mean, we'd go to listen to music because if you're going to want to meet somebody like this, and this is what you did to meet people back then, you didn't have a phone, that you could scroll through. You at least knew that if you met somebody at this place where they had a band that you liked, that you had something in common. Of course,
you had some commonality.
It's some commonality, like the same kind of music,
Yeah.
That means a lot. That means a lot to me anyway.
Yeah, you can't be with someone that you don't share the same taste in music. How could you?
Well, no, Although I'm a kind of like a world music, local music, funk, that kind of person. Whereas my husband, for example, is a classical music freak. He knows opera and classical music like the back of his hand. I mean, he's beyond an aficionado. He knows it. He plays games with me all the time. But he also likes pop music, which I'm not that fond of. So, we both love music, and that's important. And to me, in a relationship, I couldn't be around somebody who didn't like music. I couldn't. It would be impossible. It's my life.
Yeah. Speaking of importance, in one sentence, what impact do you believe that the LMHE will have on the future of Louisiana music culture?
I think that it will codify an interest from the community regarding music and musical culture on a statewide basis, because you have to include all the different kinds of musics that are around the state. For example, you have to include Cajun and Zydeco. You have to include blues, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, and then you have to include country. You have the Louisiana Hayride. That was a big deal. All of that stuff could be codified and say, this is where you can really find out the information. But at the same time, make LMHE a hub that includes other things like music education, music business education, music business, period, archival information, all the stuff. There needs to be a hub, and that is where it could be. And the city could be involved. My brain goes crazy because there's so many things that I think it could be the center of.
On a governmental level, why do you think they should be investing?
I think that if they don't, they're missing a huge opportunity to not only develop and enhance tourism to the state, which always comes up first, but it also demonstrates that they understand the business side of it, that musicians need to be paid. Musicians need to know how to take care of themselves on a business scale, and that could be spread throughout the state, and it should be promoted throughout the state through economic development, as well as their tourism arena. And I think it could happen. My problem is that I'm just too anxious and too busy. 40 years is too long for me.
That's a long time.
Stuff should have happened way before this. And I'm old now. And, somebody else has to carry on the push. And I'm hoping the LMHE does it. Wonderful. Because you have the ability to do it. You have the
time is now.
Time is now, exactly.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and do this.
Okay, good.
And
I'm glad I helped.
Yeah. In closing, this is a call to action. So if anybody is interested, please visit lmhe.org, where you can donate. You can become an ambassador for the LMHE. And you can follow us on social media, on Instagram at LMHE NOLA, and on YouTube at Louisiana Music and Heritage Experience. Once again, thank you so much for your time, Jen.
Oh, you're welcome. Loved it.
Thank you.